Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. Good turnout, considering there's no lunch today.
Oh, really?
But hopefully the cakes will make up for it. This has become a bit of a tradition now to welcome the company that are going to present the Christmas show to the stables, and a chance for them to talk a little bit about themselves and the production, a chance for you to ask lots of questions and to get inspired about the marketing campaign. So I'd like to welcome Russell and Mark back for a second year, because we had Strangeface last year doing the fantastic Christmas Carol, and we're this year in for a treat, I think, with Pinocchio. So before we start, I think, in terms of getting into the meat of the story of Pinocchio, for those of you that maybe didn't have a chance to get to know Strangeface last time, perhaps Russell could talk a little bit about the history of the company and what inspires you as a company and how the company work together.
Right. We've been going for, well, this is our 10th year actually, and we started the company by accident. It's quite a long story. We used to perform outdoors, but we've sort of come through to this route. I used to work for a company called Trestle who did a lot of mask work, and so I would design shows and I would make masks for them, and then we've now come to this point, 10 years after starting what initially was called the Blue Chicken, somewhat unadvisedly. Well, we thought it was a cult name, but we were after 4 years of actually building up quite a following, we were advised that the Arts Council felt that might not be such a good name when we were applying for money. So we then changed our name to Strangeface. And what we've become over those 10 years is we're very interested in the synthesis of mask and live music and puppetry. And looking around, I think we're probably one of the only companies that actually does that. We are pretty unique, and we feel that it creates it. Bearing in mind we have normally 5 performers, we tend to punch above our weight in terms of being able to give some kind of epic feel to the shows that we do. Hands up who came to see Christmas Carol here last year? Oh, lots of you. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Yes. So there are quite a few of you who are familiar with the sense that you do get, it doesn't feel like 5 performers, does it? It felt like there were a lot more. Yes, and Mark is the composer, and brother as well. And there is a third brother who sends his apologies for not being, who will be directing this show as well, as he directed Christmas Carol. What else can I say about us? Colourful. I suppose some of the reviews are sort of colourfully grotesque, energetic, witty. One of the things that we're particularly proud of is the way that we break down the fourth wall between us and the audience. Not only during the show, because we tend to always have some kind of form of chorus who will always engage the audience in one way or another. And it's not what audiences normally expect, is for people to start flying off the stage and sort of talking to them or coming through them. And particularly for a Christmas show, I think that works particularly well. But also at the end, we have a show and tell where people can come up and they can come around and have a look at the sets. Our sets are normally fairly sculptural, and they kind of have the element of a puppet booth crossed with a theatre set, crossed with some kind of strange sculpture, and people like to explore that, and also to have a go with the puppets and to try the masks on as well. And we really enjoy that, and we tend to find that the people who enjoy that are the ones who tend to come back. So yes, to sum it up, I think what we tend to do with our shows is we try to create an event rather than a product. And long may that continue.
I think it was one of the highlights actually of last year was the backstage tours, the ability for people to come.
The show was rubbish, really. But you know, the backstage tour, fool.
The added value of being able to do that was something that people really commented on, and the fact that it was a memory that people will take with them.
Absolutely, I think it's something that people don't expect, and it's something which is one of the great things about the masks and the puppets is that by showing people how the magic is made, it makes it stronger. It doesn't diminish it in any way. You don't feel the need to sort of say, oh, it's not like a magician's trick where you say, I can't show you how this is done. Showing people sort of a lifeless bit of cloth and latex and how it comes to life is as interesting as parts of the show, I think.
And we're working slightly differently this year. For those of you who perhaps don't know how we normally select Christmas shows, is we go and see something, or we go and see a company, and we say that'd be a great show for the stables. But such was the enthusiasm and success of A Christmas Carol. Alison embarked on a long conversation with Russell and the company about how we might work together this year and how we might actually co-produce a show which was suitable for the stables. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about that process and how that's been and what that means for you.
Well, it was, as everybody knows, times are hard in the arts at the moment, and we had an enormously we had a great time here. As many of you know, we had the unfortunate beginning to coming in with Christmas Carol by having somebody who'd just broken their foot, which was hard work, but we are still enormously grateful to everybody here for giving us such a warm welcome and allowing us actually just to have the time to rehearse somebody else into the show. So based on the relationship that developed, which I feel is very special actually, and that's with everybody here, with the volunteers as well as the management. It seemed abrupt actually to sort of end the relationship after Christmas Carol. So if there was some way that we could carry it on, then we were hoping we could. Unfortunately, we have managed to sort of come up with this idea of doing Pinocchio. Which you'll notice I'm mentioning as Pinocchio because we've had some, as we've been telling people we're doing it, we've had some emails from people saying, please don't make it American, please let it not be Disney, and therefore, the Italian pronunciation is apparently Pinocchio, so we are going with that. So, but it's a very interesting show for us. I think it will be a development from Christmas Carol, and you'll see a few different techniques of the way that we sort of tell the story, and it's quite self-referential in the fact that you've got a show told by a mask and puppet company about puppets, which I think is going to be very interesting. It's going to be very interesting. So there's a big challenge on that. I'm trying to think what else have we got?
What drew you to that story? Because I know that we had several discussions.
We talked about the possibility of Hansel and Gretel. Yeah. Which is one of my favourites, I have to say, but I think we've made the right decision about doing Pinocchio because you have more characters for a start, and it doesn't involve cannibalism, which is always a good start for a Christmas show. Mind you, having said that, Hansel and Gretel is the traditional German Christmas show. Everybody goes to see Hansel and Gretel at Christmas, but then we're not necessarily in Germany. But Pinocchio is a story which has it has a wide range of possibilities to it. You have, I think one of our strengths as a company is that we tend to appeal to all ages. It's very much like The Simpsons in some way, in the fact that, as a younger person you can see the show as a mask and puppet show, but we rather like to put stuff in for the adults as well. To be serious about it, what I love about Pinocchio is the fact that it is essentially a cautionary tale, and for me it sat very much in the world of Roald Dahl rather than the Disney, because I find the Disney slightly cloying, and from the top we've tried to make it very, very clear that it is not going to be that kind of world. Merely because I find the original story a lot more interesting. If you go back to the original, it was written as a cartoon strip, sort of episodic cartoon strip, by Carlo Collodi. Lorenzi was his real name, but his pen name or drawing name was Carlo Collodi, and he tried to kill Pinocchio off at one point by sort of nailing him to a tree. Which is, you'll be glad to hear, is not in this version, although there is an element of that. But it is much darker, and it sits much more in that world of Roald Dahl. And one of the things that we've become aware of in our sort of 10 years of experience is that I think children, when they're with shows, like to be slightly scared, and I think that's good. I think that's good. One of our ethos as a company is that Mark and I we were brought up. Our father was an opera singer, and so we were constantly going to operas as children. And obviously, you don't understand it all. However, being presented with that sort of gothic experience of seeing people around you who were older laughing and or enjoying or showing emotions towards something you didn't quite understand, I think acted as a a way of drawing us on into theatre, through our teenage years and into our adulthood. And I think that's had a big effect on what we do now, in the fact that theatre should be this kind of Gothic experience. I think that if you have a piece of theatre that reveals itself fairly easily to an 8-year-old, I think once they get to 9 and 10, they'll think, well, that's theatre for me now. I'm going to play with my Xbox. And so what Pinocchio has is it has several elements within it. On its most basic level, it is a puppet who wants to become a boy. On another level, it's all to do with what is it that really makes a human being, almost what is a soul. And then when you go on to another level, you can see it as a massive metaphor for Geppetto being almost God. You've got the Blue Fairy, who's the Virgin Mary. It's almost a Christ story, actually, which is getting a little deep for Christmas here, possibly. Or not. I don't know. What have I said? Oh, gosh. But there's certainly plenty in there for everybody. So I think that's what attracted me to it. I have to say, I'm doing this from the point of view of only having just plotted things out, and I'm in the process of writing it now and writing the song. So I can't give you all it says here in our script. But
and how do you go about adapting the story into a text that's suitable for this sort of stage?
Suitable for well, looking at the original, it's very episodic. So you've got things like the whale suddenly appears. There's no, you don't have the whale sort of introduced at the beginning in any kind of sort of sense of, it's going to appear at some point, so there's no anticipation. So as a writer, what you have to do is, Mark and I will sit down with Ashley as well, and the other brother, and we'll say, well, what actually is Pinocchio about, and what are people expecting to see? So I think there is the nose, the donkey, and then there's the whale as well. So there are 3 elements there. And then you look at seeing the scenes which actually will work in terms of telling that story and giving it a bit of a narrative arc. One of the things that we've done is we've set it in a fishing village, which I think is an unusual turn, but it does make sense. It begins to make sense of the fact that actually there is a threat. And we've also added an element of a slight mystery element to it, in the fact that there are boys who are disappearing from the village as well, which will, I don't know how much you want me to give away.
I think we keep some of the surprises.
Okay, well, so we've added the sense of there being sort of some kind of jeopardy at the beginning, and there being a sense of anticipation as to how things are going to work out. What I've also tried to do is to get this sense of the effect of this small boy's behaviour on the whole. So the whole village is involved in the effects of Pinocchio's behaviour, and they don't all react to it in the kind of slightly more clawing way that perhaps the Disney does. So at one point, Pinocchio is rejected completely and feels that he's lost, and I think they want to chop him up for firewood, really. Essentially.
And so the text, the words come first, and then the music follows.
No, it's whatever happens.
Okay.
Mark, this would be good. This would be a good point to bring in Mark. Actually, because he hasn't spoken yet.
Hi.
He likes to talk.
You'll never guess who the eldest brother is.
Didn't speak till I was 5.
He's not joking either.
I think Russell and I have settled into a way of doing things from the song point of view. Sometimes Russell will phone me up and say, look, I've got a great idea where a song should be. I'll say, okay, and then he'll say, and I've got some lyrics. And it actually works out quite evenly that Russell will write some lyrics and I will set those to music, or I will come up with a tune and he will write the lyrics to the tune. So it's a bit of a 50-50 thing. Towards the end, it becomes a bit of a time issue. Who's got more time? But yeah, it's very, very satisfactory.
And I seem to recall in Christmas Carol, the music played a really strong element throughout the whole piece in terms of setting the atmosphere, creating tension. Can we expect something similar in?
You can. I mean, in fact, the last show Russell and I wrote together is just gone out on tour, which is a version of A Rake's Progress. And because I had made a personal decision not to go with it as the MD, we actually employed a West End keys player to take on my role as musical director. Unfortunately, it meant that I had to write it for a keyboard rather than accordion, because I usually compose everything on the accordion. And then adapt it if necessary. You know, using the right hand on the piano, as a lot of you saw me do last year. But with a conventional pianist, and he's an absolutely brilliant musician and pianist, I had to actually write the whole thing on the keyboard, which did stretch me actually, because when you're playing the accordion, you press a button, you've got a chord, as you know, a lot of you all know. But I am very much looking forward to strapping the accordion back on, and coming back here and doing 3 weeks of just playing with the accordion. The accordion is and the other thing about writing Rake's Progress showed me that when there aren't songs going on, there's quite often a need for underscoring from an atmospheric point of view. With a conventional keyboard, that's actually quite difficult to do, but with an accordion, you can just play open chords underneath anything and offer a level of support which is quite often very quiet, but it supports the scene without being intrusive. And once the music underscoring becomes too loud, it cuts off the suspension of disbelief. So you have to be very, very careful on levels, and that's something that it was a novelty for me for the first time to come in last year and and go from having an amplifier by me to putting my whole setup through the Stables PA system, which is a fantastic system. And initially I was thinking, I'm losing control. I'm losing control. But you know, it did sound absolutely amazing in the end, and it's very exciting to think that I'll be doing the same thing again.
And can you give us a preview of anything?
Well, I've got... A lot of you will have seen the gongophone from last year, which is this instrument here, which I used for the Ghost of Marley, and which basically has this. When Pinocchio gets swallowed by the whale. So I've increased my arsenal of effects. So, maximum effect when you close your eyes. This is them inside the whale.
I think what's an interesting point to make is that because Mark is at the side playing all his sort of various instruments, and certainly for Christmas Carol we had bells and all sorts of bits and pieces. He's a bit like a Foley artist, and it adds to the interest of the show where people are looking off to one side. Very annoying as a performer, obviously, if you're coming out as Scrooge and they're looking over at the musician at the same time. And particularly after the show, when most people came up and wanted to go and talk to Mark first. But it certainly adds something in terms of the imaginative scale. Talking about suspension of disbelief, one of the things that we found with masks, which we will get onto in a little bit, I think, is that you're telling a huge lie at the beginning of the show, and it's an immensely, what you're doing is you're opening up people's imaginations, because you naturally want to accept. What have we've got Susan here, who was in there. As soon as you're telling people that that's a face, although we naturally want to accept it, you're basically allowing people's imaginations to accept a lot more. And so what we tend to find is by constantly kicking them out of the story, by, for instance, having our musician obvious at the side of the stage, it allows people's imaginations to work overtime. And there's something very, very special about mask and puppet that really, if you give the audience credit for having an imagination, you don't have to have the helicopter coming in at the end of the show.
And just about the musician at the side, I think it's also quite important that he's unmasked.
Yes.
Because it gives a channel for the audience. If an audience member comes in and sees masked and thinks, oh...
Absolutely.
Seeing someone else that's unmasked on stage does actually help that process and break down those barriers from a performance point of view. Yeah.
Sure.
We were talking earlier about how some people find masks quite scary, and it's not necessarily an age thing, but a kind of reaction to the fact that it's a static.
True.
Face.
Well, I think now's the moment to get somebody up. Yeah. Who didn't see? Who is a new volunteer here, please? Come on.
Like they're going to volunteer.
Come on. I would like a volunteer up on stage.
Holly. I think Holly. Holly's one of our newest members of staff.
Who can we have? Thank you very much. Let's have a round of applause here. Lovely. Right, now stay there, Sarah. Right, I've got a choice here. So we have, I think we might give you Susan, actually, to start off with. Yes. In fact, we'll give you Susan. Yeah, we'll give you Susan. There we go. Would you like to face me?
Yes.
Thank you. Come stand there. Don't walk backwards, because you're going to fall backwards off the stage. It should be more of an entrance that we think. There we go. I'll just pop that on your head. Thank you. Okay. Right. Okay. Now the light's quite overhead, so it might be a bit shadowy. Right. Would you just like to open your mouth a bit? Ah, brilliant. Okay. Right. Would we like to just turn around and face the audience here? Now, who can? It's Holly, isn't it?
It is.
Are you still remembering Holly underneath, or have you suddenly been presented with a new person? Straight away, isn't it? Straight away. The wonderful. Let's just see what the mask does for a second. So, would you just like to open? Should we give her a name? Let's give her a different name. Who's got an idea for a name for this character? Anything?
Hannah.
Sorry?
Hannah.
Hannah. That's a lovely name for that mask. Hello, Hannah. Hi. Would you just like to open your mouth to the audience, Hannah? Just There we go. Stick your tongue out. Show your bottom teeth. Go like that. So there's lots of possibilities of expression with the mask, but you are instantly taken into a world where you want to know all about Hannah, don't you? Definitely. Okay. The body becomes much more important with mask work. So that my theory about it is that the audience is, because you're trying to find out what's going on by other means, you're reordering people's perception. They actually you're on a bit of a high to start off with. It's because you're having to work out, where's my information coming from? So, right, Hannah, would you like to put your hands on your hips, maybe? Just straight away, good. Okay, do we feel that that's a good gesture? What kind of gesture goes with the centre of this mask? Well, any ideas? What would you like to see from this mask? Anything?
Pulp Fiction.
Just a gesture. Just a gesture would be fine. Just a gesture would be fine. Anything? What does she now? You want to do? Could you do that? We've had a little suggestion from the back. Very, very good. Lovely. Okay. What else would we like to see from this mask? How about what kind of voice do you think might have?
High.
A high voice. Hannah, could you just say something like hello in a high voice? Can we just say? Does that work out for you? Give Holly a big round of applause, please. Thank you very much. Well done. It's quite warm in there, isn't it? It's quite warm. There you go. Right, you can all ask Holly about what that was like afterwards. But I think the point that I was trying to demonstrate there is as soon as the mask is on, it's far from sinister. So you may be asked questions about that, because one of the things that we find is a challenge in selling a show is that if we have a picture of a mask, people go, oh, that's quite sinister, I'm not sure whether I want to come. Kids don't. Kids want to come along, but it's normally the adults as gatekeepers who want to protect the feelings of their children. But actually, it's very much a comic thing. As soon as the mask or the puppet moves, its tendency is towards comedy. Also, you want to get to know that character, don't you? Straight away, you are curious. It takes a lot less, if you're doing it right, for a mask to engage an audience than it does for somebody who is unmasked. Which is why I think it's such a wonderful choice to be able to do, A, for doing Christmas Carol or for doing Pinocchio as well, because you're straight into that story. But yes, afterwards I do have 2 or 3 other masks. Unfortunately not for the show at the moment, because unlike this stage last year when we came up to do Christmas Carol, we already had the show in the bag and we knew what we were offering you. We're still making it at the moment. So I do have some masks, but not necessarily the ones that are going to be on the show. Hello, we sort of got to a question bit. Is that all right?
That's fine.
Yes, hello.
It's just that, I can't remember from last time, but
Yes.
the prominent eyes, the bulging eyes,
Yes.
can be off-putting.
Can they? Well, she is a bit of an exception. She's a very early mask that I made, and the thing is, she's got the biggest heart on stage.
The big eyes.
They've all got big eyes. Do you know why that is? I mean, we have our very cute mask here, which is our boy, who you will remember actually was part of the chorus last year. But the big eyes, one of the reasons for that is it actually carries further over an audience, and the emotion of the mask is more intense. I mean, some of them have eyelids, and you tend to find, I mean, I'm going into sort of the slightly more technical elements of it now, but you tend to find, seeing as I make the masks, I shall enjoy this moment to explain, the masks with eyelids have a more internal world. You can see with that, you can begin to see that there is a sense of something going on inside the mask. Whereas with the masks which are more sort of slightly more bulgy-eyed, they're more intense, aren't they? You can see they're sort of much more naive, much more open to the world. It's a very interesting world of psychology, that. But you're right, yes, they don't look human. They are a sort of another species, really.
I think the first one has got more white showing, and I think that potentially...
What, this one?
No,
Susan.
Susan.
the white's common.
Right, yes. I mean, she's a sort of... as a mask maker, I'm very interested in the sculpture. I mean, I'm not very... I like that area where sculpture meets anatomy. And as human beings, our brains are incredible in the way that we will interpret faces. If you look on eBay, it's full of pieces of toast where people have said, look, it's the face of Jesus. And we're prepared to buy that. And what you're doing is you're going back to a very, very...
I'm not.
Okay, well, you're not. Well, when I say we... and the reason for that is that when we were walking along the savannah or we were in the bush, thousands of years ago, if you didn't have that ability to see a face, even if there wasn't a face, you were going to get pounced on and eaten. So it's far better to see a face and there not be one there than not to see the saber-toothed tiger. And I think that's the thing that mask does now. You're interpreting elements and putting them together to make a face. And because we're then saying, yes, this is a face, you've automatically got that slightly heightened sense of awareness in the audience. And you will tend to find, I mean, we've always found that audiences, particularly those who've never seen mask shows before, are on a kind of high by the time they get to the end of the show. And you can, when they come up and talk to you around the back, they're amazed at how just that bit of plastic has actually created that effect in them. And they've done the work themselves.
How do you get from idea in Russell's head to physical mask? What's the process?
Oh, much pain. The physical process is I will take a piece of clay. I'm going to do workshops in this. I'll take a piece of clay and I will start off and make a little maquette. It's a sort of miniature version. And for all of those, I've made little clay versions. And the great thing about that is you can see in your hand that you can see the energy that face will have. Even looking at people here who aren't masked, I'm hoping, different people's faces suggest different energies. As you said, you wanted to hear a high voice with Susan, and that's actually pretty much the voice that she has. The bug-eyed, we called her Hannah, but her real name in the last show was Susan. And she had a bit of a high voice like that, didn't she? Sort of, but yeah, she did, yeah. But looking around at everyone, different people's faces suggest different voices and different rhythms. And so I will have a maquette, which I will make quite extreme, and you can see whether it's a face that, or a body that wants to, or whether it wants to go. And so already you're beginning to see the different rhythms. It's like music. You're putting together a score. So you've maybe got your sort of staccato mask, and then you've got your sort of maybe sort of glissando mask, or you've got your sort of heavy deep throb mask. And hopefully you would have a range of each, which will put together a nice sort of set. After that, I will take a cast of our performer's face, and I will scale up that shape onto the cast of the face. And then I use a vacuum former, which is, afterwards you're welcome to come and have a look at the masks if you haven't sort of played around with them before. But a vacuum former, it's basically takes a piece of plastic and heats it up and sucks it over the mould that I've made. And it's the same process as is used in, say chocolate boxes. You know, the trays in chocolate boxes are made the same way, much thinner plastic, but it's exactly the same process. And I find it's better than anything, really, or even leather to a certain degree, because leather takes a long time. And you can't colour leather to the same way that you can paint what we have here, and it's a very, very quick process. I mean, once I've made the mould, I can then get to the painted sort of finished version within a couple of hours from there. So it's
and Holly, you said it was very hot under there.
It is very hot. It
is that why you change characters a lot of the time?
Yes. Well, people who've come to see more than one show, when they come up at the end, they tend to know that the masks to try on are the ones that haven't been touched, for the second half. We do carry a sort of a set of wipes around the back just to sort of scoop out the worst of the moisture. But but it can be like running a marathon. When we first started, we used to do 2 shows in one day and then 2 shows the next day, and it was outdoors, which means that the energy is even higher because you're trying to stop people from, looking at the butterfly behind them or at children or their picnic. So you're using any method to try, but we would be so hot that we would have to find a tumble dryer for everything at the end of the day. But you stay fit. You stay fit.
And the music, we've heard the atmospheric side of things. Is there a jolly side to the music this time?
There will be extremes, as there were in Christmas Carol. The songwriting as such is very much in its infancy, as is the script at this stage, having just managed to write another show and send it out. Oops.
I think if you don't believe that Geppetto and Pinocchio have a love for each other, and most of that is carried by the music, I think we're kind of lost to start off with. I mean, the show is ultimately all about love in different forms and absence of love.
The chorus in the show are going to play as much, if not more, of a part.
Okay.
I think, and we're toying with the idea of having 4 instead of 3, aren't we?
We are. We're going to have 4 chorus.
I guess you had quite a lot to play with Christmas Carol in terms of all those Christmas themes. And
yeah.
Well, what was awful about Christmas Carol? I mean, I know it went down well, but all the characters were so irredeemably nice. For those of you who saw it, what I loved about it was the low-life scene where they sang the song "You Can't Take It With You When You Go" as they were dividing up the spoils from Scrooge's room. And the thing about masks is they kind of do vice a lot better than they do rogues and rascals very, very well. And the wonderful thing about Pinocchio is that apart from Geppetto and the Blue Fairy, who is something else, everybody else is kind of a bit of a rogue or a rascal or somehow slightly strange. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing the range of masks that we come up with. You've got Lampwick, who is sort of he's the kind of boy who would pull the wings off flies, I think. And Fox and Cat are a gift. It's always nice to have a double act, a roguish double act. But anyway, Mark, play some music.
This is a piece of music, I suppose. It's not going to be a song that represents the feel of the chorus. So it's quite
A ripple.
So it's quite a. What I want to do is get a bit more quirkiness into this score, I think, because while there are the same amount, really, of other worlds going on within the piece, it is about a puppet, and as a result, I feel I want to raise that.
You are in another
that
world.
Quirkiness,
One of the Christmas Carol was extraordinary because you could show supernatural. And you accepted the fact that there were ghosts suddenly appearing, and Mask does that very well, combined with puppet. I think the thing about the slight shift with Pinocchio is that you're living in an everyday town, which albeit is going through hard times, which suddenly accepts that a puppet can be a boy. And I like that. I think that's it's all to do with the possibilities of life. And there is a kind of a spirit world as well. So the music really helps to provide that sort of sense of possibility, and anything can happen.
And the accordion's very evocative of Italy. Does it feel a European kind of setting? Is that where you're heading for?
I think that I'm not going to deliberately go for anything Italian. I'm very influenced in general by Eastern European accordion playing. There's a guy called Marian Mexicano, I don't know whether you know of him. And for inspiration, if I
get him over, he's very good. He's extraordinary.
Yeah, it's an incredible talent. Marian Mexicano. If you can YouTube him, you can't see his fingers because it's just everywhere. It's just complete genius, and I just love the key relationships and the modulations that they use, and I suppose I'm quite influenced by that. But I also, as was the case with Christmas Carol, I like to have a patchwork of songs. The last song on the show is usually klezmer related. There's usually a song in which is the case with Pinocchio actually. I'm writing a song at the moment, which because in the second act we're going to have a sort of riot where the villagers decide that Pinocchio is responsible for everything that's gone wrong in their lives, and
he's the Jonah.
He
becomes
down.
the Jonah.
They hunt him down, and there's it's a bit like Frankenstein's castle thing going on. And as was the case with the first song in Christmas Carol, the verse is all spoken and shouted over the first section of music, and then there's a very tightly knit harmonic chorus to follow. So I've actually done that in every show I've written. There's always been one song like that, but I love it, and it's all about finding a style, I think. And if people like the shows, there's no real reason for changing that much. Yeah. Although I do want to get a lot more into it.
In terms of place, actually, where you're talking about setting it, it's Sicily. It's sort of down. It's southern Italy, where actually there is this sense of the magical world, and particularly in sort of it's the first half of the 20th century, around about the 20s, I think. So it is a world where people are quite poor, and the great thing about those times is suddenly possibilities begin to open. If everybody's on the make and times are hard, people begin to see other things. And I think that has a direct relationship to where we are now. So I'm hoping that rather than making it a massive sort of costume drama, we can actually make it a little more relevant in terms of attitudes towards Pinocchio and the general fun that we can have with the show, but also for it to be more than just an entertainment.
Excellent. And you're definitely going to be here.
I am.
But
I'm planning to move the family up.
And I have to say, both these guys have just recently had new additions to their family, so their families are expanding.
I've got a 6-month-old, Russell's got a 7-month-old, he's got a 3-year-old, I've got a 2-year-old. So yes.
Bit of competition, friendly rivalry.
I think what we've discovered is that one child is a major inconvenience, but 2 children is definitely a family. So no, I can hear some agreement out there. Yeah.
And a ready-made focus group emerging. But Russell, you're not coming this year?
Well, I'm designing and writing it, so I thought maybe it'd be best to stick to that.
A little tall for Pinocchio, anyway.
Yeah.
I am a little tall for Pinocchio. Yes, you're right.
So it's a different cast.
It's a different cast, although some of you may remember Roxy from last year, who was the one who didn't break her foot, and she's back. In fact, we have a very good cast this year because they are Sam.
Not the last year's wasn't.
Not the last year's, yes. We have Sam, who was at college. In fact, they were all at college together. And this is an opportunity for them to. They all know each other. They've all got back together to be able to do this. So they're all very much looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And over the last 2 years, I mean, we've become, or 2 or 3 years, Strangeface has become a company that people sort of say they want to work for, which is I don't know what we've done. I don't know who's been saying something. It's all wrong.
No one laughed.
Yeah.
And so is it opening here, or are you previewing it before?
No, we are opening it here. So yes, what a lucky time your first night are going to have. Yes. What an extraordinary feeling that's going to be.
Live theatre.
It is. Yeah. So.
And a lot of performances again. Hopefully no snow this time, and hopefully no accidents in advance.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you can guarantee no snow, we'll guarantee no accidents.
Has anyone got any other questions for the guys that we would like to throw into the equation? Yeah.
It's not really a question, it's a rhetorical groan. But I wondered, given you're setting Pinocchio in Sicily, whether you'd be featuring the Cosa nose.
No, I don't think so. I think the nearest you possibly get to it are there are two elements of crime. One is the cat and the fox, who in the original are actually murderous, but are less murderous in our version, but there's certainly evil intent. And you also have there are two characters that we've conflated, which are there is the puppet master, and then there is the donkey man, and the two have become the same thing. And without giving too much away, he is up to no good. So. Yeah, there is crime, but I don't think we're particularly talking about making an offer you can't refuse. But there is a donkey's head. I think what's worth saying at this point, because we are obviously very grateful for you in the past for sort of passing on word of mouth and being able to sort of big us up and get people to come in. If you've got any things that you think, how do I sell that if somebody asks me that question? Do feel free to ask us now, because I think we might be able to give you a good answer, have a stock answer that you can give. What have we covered? We've covered the fact that the masks can look, when they're just pictures, they can look a little bit sinister, but actually I think you've seen from Holly's mask debut that actually it is quite amusing. What you can also do is you can point people to, we don't have a video of this yet because obviously we're still making it, but certainly on our website we have, and we could possibly put a link, I don't know, we could put a link on your website to images of previous shows where there you can see The Last Resort, which was actually a show that we won an award in Iran for that. I'll tell you about that later. That was a bizarre story. Talking about any possibility, but certainly you could point people towards that, because it's a really nice little 3-minute piece, and it'll show that mask and puppet works together rather well. Yes.
Age group for children, it says all but the very young. What?
Well, Christmas Carol, I tried to scare off as many children as possible, because I just don't believe that theatre can be categorised. I think good theatre is good theatre, and that's what we aspire to. With Christmas Carol, we said it was 7+, didn't we? And we then had 5-year-olds. I mean, I think if you can sit through the show, I think that's the guide. I mean, I've got a 3-year-old who's just beginning to get to the point where she can sort of sit through an hour, which is fair enough.
There's a difference between scary and something that's morbid and gratuitous.
Yes.
And I think scary is fine, as long as parents have a decent idea of what
I think your guide is Roald Dahl. I think that's a really good way of selling it, because Roald Dahl is as attractive to adults as it is to children as well. And I think our physical style is very much in that world of sort of Matilda. It is, after all, a cautionary tale, the Pinocchio story. If you wanted to add anything else into that, you can use, say, Tim Burton, as a guide as well. Something like Nightmare Before Christmas, which is again very colourful and works on loads and loads of different levels. But yes, Cartoon
is it
World.
2 45-minute halves?
Yes, it will be aimed around about that. I mean,
so there's an interval.
There will be an interval. Yes, there will be merchandise in some way or some form or another. Yes, yes. So yeah, I think if you say five and up, but the thing is, as soon as you say 5 and up, people bring 3-year-olds.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's up to parents. It's up to parents as to how au fait their children are with being able to sit still.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you don't get a 16-year-old who can make it through the first 10 minutes. I have trouble myself. Do we have any other questions? Oh, there must be loads. If you're going to be passing, there must be something that's crossing people's minds. How do I do this? Maybe they can ask the questions while trying on the masks. Maybe whilst trying on the masks.
In true Strangeface fashion.
Absolutely, yes. I apologise, I haven't brought any puppets today, but they're all out on shows. We've doubled our output over the past year. So having gone from doing a show every 18 months, we're now doing 2 shows per year. That's not quite mathematically correct in terms of doubling output, but you know what I mean. Yeah, so everything is out on shows or on workshops and stuff at the moment. But
there will be puppets in the show.
There will be puppets, yes, there will. Most noticeably, the cricket is quite a big character. Not the nauseating Jiminy cricket. Actually, interestingly, this doesn't quite happen in our show, but in the original Collodi, the cricket is beaten to death by Pinocchio within seconds of appearing, which I was so tempted to put in. But I think the running gag is the fact that every time the cricket appears, he gets beaten up by somebody, because he represents conscience. And in our version, not only is he the conscience for Pinocchio, but he becomes the conscience for the Blue Fairy as well, which I think is quite an interesting idea. And she beats him up as well. So conscience is something that this world doesn't particularly like. Yeah, so he's one puppet, and there are certainly lots of villagers and bits and pieces. You probably remember Wanton Ignorance. And there is also another style of puppet in the fact that the puppet master, this is one of the big challenges for us, is that we have puppets at the back that represent real people. And now in this show, we've got to have puppets that are actually puppets. And how do we actually show the differentiation between one form and the other? But I think that should work. We've got a solution for that.
Well, we wait with bated breath.
Good. So do we.
Look forward to it.
So do we.
Thank you very much for coming in. And I'm sure anyone would like a backstage tour of the masks, you're more than welcome to come in.
Or to fiddle with Mark's gongophone. That's what the audience always love to do. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Great. Thank you.